was one of those floating friends. I didn't have a best friend at school. Lots of people, girls often do that. They get into pairs and lads just go off and they play football, or they sit around in the music room or whatever, and they just kind of keep themselves to themselves. But the girls definitely pair up. And I was never in a pair. I was always the third wheel somewhere, or the fourth wheel more. And yet in doing that, I learnt the dynamics of friendships quite quickly. But I always really had a heart for the people that were the ones that were left out. So that was my first mission field, was just to support the underdog at school and just to look at the people that were the outcasts of society, because that's what Jesus did. And that's what he does through us now. I didn't go out intentionally and think, this is my mission field, this is what I need to do. But it was in me. I think that was the Holy Spirit in me that was just helping to minister to me to then bless others.
Yeah. Gemma, welcome to Faith Off the Record. Thank you so much for being with us. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
Thank you so much for inviting me. What a great space you've got here. I love it.
Appreciate it. So let's kick in and let's talk about Gemma. Why don't you take us back and tell us who is Gemma?
Gemma was born on the 1st of April. I'm an April fool, and I was born before midday, which makes me officially a fool. Although in my current 42 years on this planet, nobody has still successfully played an April Fool trick on me. So I'm quite pleased about that. So yeah, I was born to my Jamaican mum and my English dad on the 1st of April, 1982. And my parents were together then for about 4 years before they separated. And my mum spent most of her time working, looking after me. I would then see my dad once a week during the week, and then alternate weekends I'd go and stay with him. And I grew up in a very small town called Trowbridge. So lots of my friends back at home speak more like this, like very West Country accent. But I think working so many years in television, I've definitely learned to just sort of adapt my accent a lot more. I think probably through lots of training and things to get into television and radio. But I loved living in the West Country. It was such a freeing place to be. I could run along the canals and run around in fields and ride my bike. And it was back in the days when, you didn't have to come home until the street lights came on. And it was just a really fun childhood. And then my mum then had my sister through another relationship. And then I became second parent when I was 9 years old. Mum was a single mum, was raising me and my then baby sister. And I took it upon myself to be her big sister, but also another guardian, really. But I was the bossy one. I was always the one that kind of was the disciplinarian, and mum was the one that was working hard, and I would be having fun with my sister, but then I'd make sure she ate all her dinner. And it was fun because we were like girl power, the three of us in our house, but I still got to see my dad, and he also had remarried at this point. So I had his wife on the scene as well. And so I had quite a mixed household in that I had two houses, one with my dad and his wife, and then one with my mum and my sister. And her dad never stuck around. My dad was around, but not as much. And so we just made it work. And to some people, that sounds really alien, but that was my normal. And my mum is the one who had a strong Christian faith. My dad's family were Christian, but it was my mum who took us along to her local Baptist church. And that's what I've known since being very little. It used to have wooden pews and was very old school, had the organ, big pipe organ, and this great vicar who was Scottish. He would just get really enthusiastic in worship and clap out of time. And all of us youth just found it hilarious. And we'd love to do dramas together and go to different churches and put on little sketches. And I used to sing in the worship team. And then I went along to a summer camp. One of our youth leaders suggested a kids' summer camp. And we thought it was great because we all got to go away for a week, away from family, camping with other young people who were from churches. And it was great because I think we had quite a small youth group. And it was not lovely, but there wasn't much diversity. And then when I went along to this other church group where there was lots of kids that came from London and from Bristol, and there's just us from the West Country, but I could see different people of different skin colours and nationalities. And it was such a great experience for me to experience my faith, but broader, as God created us to be, very different and unique, made in his image. And that is where I really solidified my faith.
Right.
So having gone to church, it was kind of just sort of living out my mum's faith really and just going to Sunday school because that was what was expected. But then going to this church summer camp called Hill House in Bridgewater, which is still running, um, it just helped me to be around my people and have things that were church that were based at young people.
Yeah.
And because it was aimed at me, I felt like I really connected with it, which was so helpful for me discovering my faith for me, not just my mum's faith.
Mm.
And I remember coming back, I think it was the second year I've been, and that's the year that I really met with Jesus. And I just said, okay, Lord, come into my heart, renew me, refresh me, I want to start again. And I came back and I was dropped off at my mum's house and she was outside hanging out the laundry. And I said, Mum, I'm back. Oh, great. Yeah, nice to see you. You all right? Yeah, yeah. Had a great time. I was at camp and I became a Christian. And she looked, well, she didn't even look at me. She just looked at the socks she was pegging up. She said, mm-hmm. And how long's that going to last? And I just thought, ooh. Now, either my mum knows me this well
Mm.
that she knew that I needed a bit of encouragement to actually take it seriously, or she was thinking that I just was going to dash it to the wayside and get distracted.
Mm.
And I thought, no, I'm going to take this seriously. And I want to show my mum that this is really real for me and that this is something that I truly want to live out.
Yeah.
And so that was a real turning point for me. And even though I was probably 11 or 12 at this point, and I hadn't sort of lived a heavily sinful, promiscuous life or anything, but I definitely had messed around and done things that weren't honoring to God. And it really helped me just to spin a 180 and take a different look at life and really want to walk it with Jesus as the Lord of my life.
So we're going to talk a lot about media. We're going to talk a lot about your career
Yeah.
and just talking on the faith encounter. What made you give your life to Christ? What was that trigger point?
I think it was his plan all along to come home. And I was fortunate to have been brought up in a partial Christian family. And so I had a lot of head knowledge from going to church, going to Sunday school. But I think the heart knowledge came from going along to the church camp, going to Hill House and experiencing Jesus in my heart. As And I think as a very emotional person, I feel things very deeply. But it was an emotional connection, but it's also a tangible connection. I felt something very different. And it was like empowering. It was what I needed in that point to make sure that I stayed on the right path. God only knows where I might have ended up had I have not in that moment been obedient to his call on my heart. So I think it was probably going along to that summer camp where there were lots of wonderful youth leaders who had a real passion to see young people meet with Jesus. And I did that.
And what made you go to the camp? Was it more because of your mum was already involved with church, or was it on your own accord you wanted to go?
It was
Your discovery phase on getting to know the faith. Where did that come from?
I think because the youth leader that was looking after the small youth group we had, there was probably about five of us in the youth group. And I think he just realized that we needed to be exposed to a greater Christian community. And we'd been going along to Bristol to a youth event there called The Mix at this big church called Woody's in Bristol. And we used to go along and they had great, vibrant worship, really fun teaching, and lots of churches from other areas would come to it. And so I think having been in that community, we realized that we needed to get more involved as a small youth group. And so going along to the youth camp together enabled us to not only solidify our relationships with our youth group, but to reach out and to meet other people that lived around us. So then we met friends that lived in towns or 2 or 3 towns away. So we would connect with them. And some of those people are still my best friends now.
Wow.
Some of them really are my truly soul sisters. Like they are my people that I met on this summer camp. Because a youth leader saw that there was a need for community in young people, not just to be in the church, but to be in the wider church and to reach out beyond the 4 walls of where they were living. So I'm grateful to Phil, who was the guy that was our youth leader that recommended us going on this church camp. And many of us carried on going for years after we were there as campers. We then went back as leaders to give back to something that really gave to us.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you've now entered the faith. You're in church. What's day one of new Gemma then at that point? What does that look like? What were you doing? Describe on where was your life taking you?
I saw my ministry as being my school, and I befriended the underdog. I was one of those floating friends. I didn't
Mm,
have a best friend at school. Lots of people buddied up. Girls often do that. They get into pairs, and lads just go off and they play football, or they sit around in the music room or whatever, and they just kind of keep themselves to themselves. But the girls definitely pair up. And I was never in a pair. I was always the third wheel somewhere, or the fourth wheel more. And and in a way, that was sad because I didn't ever have this sort of stereotypical best friend. But it was good because it meant that I was able to be a bit of a chameleon. And so I could go and be a different version of me with different friendship groups. And yet, in doing that, I learnt the dynamics of friendships quite quickly in kind of who rules the roost and who's very submissive and who's left out. And I think I kind of wove in between all of those different categories, but I always really had a heart for the people that were the ones that were left out. And so I would often talk to them or sit with them or try and include them. And there was one girl particularly who was getting quite bullied by some of the more popular girls. And they were really savage with
mm,
her, like really mean. And then I found out that her family were also Christian. And I thought, why are they being so mean to her because of her faith? They don't treat me like that. And I actually don't know why. They just saw something in her and they picked on it. So I would stand up for her. So that was my first mission field, was just to support the underdog at school and just to look at the people that were the outcasts of society, because that's what
mm.
Jesus did. And that's what he does through us now. And so I was just privileged to be a Christian, which is a little version of Christ here on earth, representing him, his hands, his feet, his mouth to people around me, and trying to show them love and acceptance and inclusion.
Yeah.
And I only realized this now as an adult looking back at that, but I didn't go out intentionally and think, this is my mission field, this is what I need to do. But it was in me. I think that was the Holy Spirit in me that was just helping to minister to me to then bless
Yeah,
others.
that's amazing. So let's go through now with your transition from that point to media.
Mm.
When did that journey begin? Did you always come from a media background?
No, I didn't. My parents are incredibly shy. They are not the performers at all. Um, my dad's dad was in a male voice choir, and I remember going along to church with him because my dad's parents went to church um, when I was little, and watching him in the choir and just looking at him singing his heart out. And he looked so happy and so liberated being up there. It was just amazing. So that was my inspiration. And then when we used to spend Saturdays or Sundays with my mum's side of the family or the Jamaican side, all the grandkids would get together and we'd get the old video cameras, like the ones that would sit on your shoulder with actual VHS tapes in it. And we would record home movies. And I was always the presenter in them for some reason. And I was always just sort of taking that role on. It just became my thing. And I instinctively did that. But it was at another festival. This was Soul Survivor when it was at the Bath and West Showground in Shepton Mallet. And I was there when I was 16. And it was an evening where they were talking about spiritual giftings and prophesying over people. And somebody had a word of prophecy, so a word from God for me, that was that I would be salt and light in the dark place, the godless place of the media. And at 16, I'm thinking, right, that's amazing. I want to get on telly. I want to be a Blue Peter presenter. That's where God wants to use me because I love working with kids. I've got my younger sister and I'm really good at entertaining her at her birthday parties and keeping her entertained and occupied. This is definitely what I think I need to do. And so with that conviction, with that word of prophecy, I thought, well, I know that I need to do this the academic route. I don't believe in just kind of walking into a situation, just having the job right there and then. I think I need to go through the academia route. So I thought, I'm going to make sure that all of my studies from here on in are going to help me to get to that place. So then I studied performing arts and psychology and English language at A level. And then when I got my 3 A's at A level, I then went off to university. And at the time, I was looking for a university that actually specialized in being a TV presenter and or going to drama school. But drama school was really expensive and my family couldn't afford
Mm.
that. So I thought the university route was going to be much more affordable. But there were only 2 universities in the whole country that had a course that was based on TV presenting. So I applied to both of them. One was in Luton, one was in Salford near Manchester. And I was desperate to go to Manchester, but I got Luton. And so when I got to Luton, I realized again just how diverse Luton was
Mm.
and how that was, again, just somewhere that made me feel very at home, very at ease. I met lots of other people of color that were on my course that became friends, that was very different to the life that I'd lived in the predominantly white West Country. And it was just such an eye opener. And I really did feel like I belonged there. And I got great opportunities to come down to London to do different auditions and experiences. But it was whilst I was there that I met an agent, and she came in my 3rd year, but to talk to the 2nd year students about getting into the industry. And I just thought, hang on, I'm going to be breaking into the industry a year ahead of these chumps. I'm going to
Mm.
go along to this seminar and see what I can get out of it. I got myself an agent out of it because I said to her, look, I've got this VHS of me doing some presenting on a national TV search for a new presenter that I'd been on a couple of years previously for Is She MTV? And so this VHS tape I showed to the agent, and she said, well, it's all right. It's not brilliant, but we'll send it out and see what comes back. And I was just praying, thinking, okay, God, this is my opportunity to
Yeah.
fulfill that
Yeah.
prophecy, to be salt and light in the dark place of the media. Can we
Yeah.
please get a job in telly? And she came back and said, I've got a friend at CBBC that would love to meet you. And I'm like, yes, please. So then I had to take a day off university, go down to London, and I met up with some of the chaps from CBBC and had an interview. They liked me and they said, would love to get you in to do a screen test. So then I went back home. I was so excited. And then I said, okay, well, I'll have to come down, Miss Uni again for another day, come back down and do the screen test.
Yeah.
So I went back to London, did the screen test in the studio that overlooks the original Blue Peter Garden in
Yeah.
White City, the television centre, and did my audition there. And I thought, you know what, Lord? I need to put you front and center stage because it's all about you. And if I'm going to fulfill this prophecy, I need to honor you.
Mm.
And so in my audition, I was asked to talk to camera for a minute, just to show that I could talk for a
Yeah.
minute. I mean, obviously now we know I can do it very well, but back then, not so much. And so I thought, okay, what can I easily talk about for a whole minute? And I'm going to talk about my church summer camp where I came to faith,
Wow.
because that is me outing myself. They know exactly what they're getting from me. And this is my opportunity to talk right down the barrel of that camera and say who I am, what I've done, what I believe.
Was that by choice or something by your faith was telling you to do that?
No, that was Jesus. That was just the Holy Spirit going, go on, girl, go for it.
Wow.
So yes, that's what I did for that 1 minute. And then I was interviewed by somebody, and then I had to do a walk and talk to show that I could multitask. And then as I was leaving the audition, they said, oh, well, thank you so much for coming. We'll be in touch. And I thought, oh, yeah, they say that to everybody. And I just walked out thinking, well, I've done my best,
Yeah.
given it my best shot. I've honoured God the best that I can do. And then a couple of hours later, I was just walking along Holborn and my phone went and my agent rang and said, are you sitting down? And I said, no, I'm just going to lean against this wall here by the bank. She said, they want to offer you a 6-month contract at CBBC. I said, but I haven't finished uni. I'm still doing my degree. They said, it's okay. Finish your degree, take a 2-week holiday, and then start. So I did. So my first day, having taken a bit of a holiday after finishing my degree, was Independence Day 2003. That's when I first started working for CBBC.
Did you feel that connecting with the agent was definitely something of the Lord's hand.
Absolutely. She is the most rock solid fairy godmother, I call her. She's like, if she knew Jesus, then she would be up there with him, but she's just one down from Jesus right now. But she is a phenomenal woman. She is so close to me. She's one of my closest friends. I cherish her. I respect her. I admire her so much. She has been there for me through thick and thin
Wow.
over the last 22 years, and I am so blessed to have met her. So I'm very grateful to God for putting her in my life. She's amazing.
So your faith now has transitioned you into CBBC.
Hmm.
Has it been a time where your faith has been put into work and you really needed to lean on your faith due to some circumstances of overcoming challenges?
Yes, absolutely. My goodness. So, I mean, I've got over 20 years worth of experience working in telly, so I'll
Yeah.
just pick maybe a couple of
Yeah.
those examples. Um, there've been a couple of times where I think compromise have been the hardest thing, in that I've had to potentially compromise my faith or my beliefs and what it is that I stand for. And one of those was working on CBBC over Halloween. And Halloween is something that has become extremely commercialized now. And for me as a Christian, I like to celebrate and have parties, but I don't feel the benefit for me to celebrate darkness and things that are related to death or things that are scary or unhelpful to my soul. And yet, I was the only presenter on BBC One that afternoon. And it's Halloween, and a lot of the nation really do get involved. They want to celebrate it. And so I was asked to dress up and to put a witch's hat on and to have a crystal ball and then to look into the crystal ball to then predict what was happening that afternoon on the channel. And in that moment, I thought, I've got two options here. I can either say no, and the script has already been written, and that puts everybody in a difficult situation because we don't have time to rewrite the script. It's already there because you only get your script on the day. You don't get it days in advance. You literally turn up for your shift. So you're on telly at 3:40 in the afternoon. You turn up at 3 o'clock. You go into makeup. You get into studio at 3:30. You look at the script. You do it. It's that quick a turnaround. Or I can actually do what is being asked of me and respect that and honor the working contract that I have to do the job that I'm being paid to do. And I went with the latter. I thought, I can do that. Even though this is not what I believe, I feel that God knows my heart and therefore his light will shine through that.
Mm,
So I'm happy to put on the witch's hat, to have the crystal ball, and to bring light into darkness, because that was the prophetic word, right?
mm,
So that's what I then did. I just brought light into that darkness
mm.
and did it with love, did it with joy. And to my knowledge, nobody ever complained or said, oh, can't believe Gemma, the Christian, is doing that. No, I think it was anything just more of a personal conviction. But then it encouraged me because I then thought, God knows my heart. He knows my intention. And I can't fear man's judgment. And I'm not in control of what other people think of me. So that was quite a turning point. Other ones have been also sort of work related, but also to do with relationships. So when I first started working at CBBC, I was dating a boy from my home church, Christian guy. We'd been together for a few years. But in that time, I just got dazzled by the bright lights and by the generosity and by the humor and the encouragement of someone who didn't know Jesus that worked in the business. And I just absolutely fell for this guy. And so ended the relationship with the Christian boy and started dating this colleague. And I guess I was just whisked off my feet. And I experienced the media world in the way that we see it through a telly, through the stage. It's just there's the bright lights, there was the razzle dazzle, it was the pizzazz, it was all the things that everybody thinks it is. But then they all come at a cost. And my cost was that I compromised my faith because he didn't share my faith. In fact, he challenged it a lot
Mm.
and belittled it. And that over time just chipped away at me and chipped away at my integrity and chipped away at me being true to myself and true to my first love.
Mm.
And I felt like I became less of who I was because I wasn't being authentic anymore.
When did you recognize that moment?
Um, it wasn't because of what friends said or family said to me, because my friends and family were all incredibly supportive throughout that time. Nobody ever told me that I was making a bad choice being in that relationship. They loved me through it, which part of me thinks is amazing that they just supported me. But part of me is really cross. They didn't just call me out and say, Gemma, this isn't right. This is not cool. It's not good for you. But they were doing what they felt was right in the moment. It was probably when actually I came out with horrendous adult acne. My entire face was covered in pustules, like
Mm,
miniature red, angry volcanoes all over. And it's because s- everything in here was unhappy, was struggling, it was compromised. And my levels of anxiety had just grown and grown and grown. And I wasn't able to eat properly. And when I was eating, I really wasn't making good food choices. I was just eating things that were highly um, calorific in terms of sugar and fat content, just to try and give me the energy I needed. I wasn't really cooking properly because I was too busy out doing things all the time, and just was one bad choice after another
mm,
to compromise by being in this relationship.
mm,
And when I had got such spotty face and had lost so much weight, to the point where it just hurt to turn over in bed because my face hurt on the pillow or my body was aching. This isn't right. This isn't what God planned for me. This isn't his best for me. And so I've got to do something about that. And that was scary because the relationship had become very controlling and he was very emotionally manipulative and made me think that I wasn't worthy to be loved by anybody. And yet I always knew that God loved me. And so that was what kept me going. And so I got help. I Despite the fact that he was very much against it, I actually went for counselling. I suggested we went together, but he definitely wasn't up for that. Didn't like the idea of somebody else speaking into our relationship, but I just had to go and speak to somebody. And in talking it through with somebody, I realized just how unhelpful and unhealthy it was. And that was crucial to get that help,
yeah.
to help me to speak it out, to actually articulate all the feelings that I was experiencing in my heart and my body and my mind, to then speak it out and hear someone else's perspective.
Yeah.
Or not even, it was just mainly feeding it back to me what I'd said and just realizing how ridiculous it sounded. And that if I was on the receiving end of a friend talking to me like that, like, I would have been there to support them. And so then I realized that I need to get that support. So I did turn to a couple of really trusted friends,
Yeah.
and some of them were from church,
Wow.
that really just prayerfully loved me through that season. And so I literally packed up everything from the house that we were living in together and I just moved back home.
Yeah.
And that was very humbling, to go back to my mum's house and back into the bedroom that I grew up in when I was very little, and just to have to try and start again, pick myself up again, start again. And it took quite a long time. And there's a very wise lady from my mum's old Baptist church who said to me, Gemma, you're going to have to take 2 years to heal from this. No relationships for 2 years. And I was like, you are kidding me. I've been back to back boyfriend since I was about 12. Like, what? 2 years? She said, no, you need 2 years,
Wow.
a couple of seasons to get through this. And she was so right.
Did it impact your work?
Yes, massively, because I lost my confidence. And because a lot of the work I was doing was alongside him. So he was always the shining light, the comedy one, and I was just kind of the sidekick to make him look and sound good. And then it got to a point where my skin was so bad that I didn't want to be on camera, but I had to, again, because I had the obligation to fulfill
Yeah.
my contract. And I would sit in the makeup chair in the morning and they would just be painting so much foundation and makeup on my face to try and give me an even skin tone. Yet the lumps and bumps you could absolutely see through the makeup. And the thing about God that kept me going was that if I can get out of bed, get myself dressed, get onto television, and if one child or even a parent is to watch and they're also having an acne struggle and they think, Gemma got out of bed this morning, I can do it too, I can leave the house today,
Mm.
then it was worth it. Every single spot was worth it to hopefully give somebody else some hope and some encouragement to get out and to get on with their day.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who may be listening that's in a position of compromise and their faith may be compromised?
Mm.
What's the piece of advice or counsel you would suggest?
Oh, it's so hard because it's so different for everybody. I mean, the right answer is to say, look to the Bible. What does God say about this? And to trust your convictions. If something doesn't feel right, then that's probably the Holy Spirit ministering to you because it isn't. But there's always a but because God gives us free will. And my heart throughout that relationship was that he would come to know Jesus. And there were some times when he did come along to church with me. And my heart still is for him to come to know Jesus. But you just have to take that between you and the Lord. My situation was very different. They're all completely unique.
Mm.
But I think that it's helpful to have real truth tellers in your life, people who will not be afraid to tell you the hard truths. And like I said, there were times where I think, oh, I wish my friend had spoken that out, but maybe they just knew that I couldn't take it in that time, and it might have been more damaging than helpful to have actually said to me at that time, "You need to break up with him. This is not good for you." Because then might have just stuck two fingers up to them as well and been like, "Nah, stuff it. I'm doing this because I'm happy I can make it work." And then that might have really ruined me and my friendship with them.
Mm.
So I think, yeah, take it to the Lord and trust your convictions and trust that God really does want the best for you. He's
Mm.
not a mean God. And even if that means that you'll be on your own for a while, that's okay.
Mm.
Because, like I said, those 2 years that I had, that I felt like my whole life was reconstructed in that time. Because then I did meet the one that God wanted me to be with,
Yeah.
but I had to go through that valley to get to that mountaintop.
Yeah. So you're in the media heavily, and a lot of people know you from TV.
Mhm.
Can you tell me about a time where your faith has literally penetrated someone, or you was able to share the gospel with someone who was an unbeliever in the field of work, whether it's through television, whether through presenting? Can you give an example where you've witnessed to someone through your career?
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times actually. But one of my favorites is, so I worked on CBBC Swashbuckle, which is a pirate themed game show. It's a little bit like Crystal Maze meets Funhouse, but with pirates. Horror. And it was just the best time working on that show. And for the first one, two, three, four, five series, I had my wonderful pirate sidekicks whom I loved, and we got on so well. I had lots of fun with, and then there was a couple of captains as well. And excuse me. And we would have really good chats about anything and everything. But I was still very subtle, I guess, about sharing my faith. And I didn't want to ram it down people's throats. And so if it came up in conversation, I'd happily talk about it, but I wouldn't readily initiate it. But I would like to demonstrate Christ-like characteristics around people. And so I would chat about what I did on a Sunday, drop in the fact that the C-bomb, went to church on the Sunday. um, or if someone's going through something difficult, I say, "Oh, I'll pray for that for you." And just in a really kind of nonchalant, chill, kind of fun way. And then it's funny how sometimes people really need to go deep. And then we had this other lady that joined the team as an actor, and she was pregnant and going through quite a difficult time working in pregnancy and was feeling very vulnerable. And so I said, "Look, well, I go to church on Sundays when we're filming. You're welcome to come with me if you like." She said, "Oh, yeah, I'd really like that, Gem. Do you mind?" I went, "Of course I don't mind. Come to church. It'd be great." I said, "Well, I'm new to the area because we were filming in Glasgow. I don't really know any churches around here, but I found this one that has a cool website. So let's check it out." So we went along to this church, and my husband was there at the time and our little girl. And it was just the right place for us to be. And we went in, and our daughter went off to the kids group, and there was this great time of worship. And they were all songs that we knew, so we could really sing with gusto. And this lady was sat with us, just sobbing. She said, "I just love it here.
Mm.
This is so good. Listening to you guys singing, I just love it. It's just what I needed." So then she had more questions about faith. I was able to chat more with her and pray with her. And then the next week, she was talking about it at work in studio all week. And the two male pirates that I've been with for the last 5 series, she then invited them to come to church with us the next week. And I'm thinking, I've worked with these guys for 5 years. I've never had the courage to just outright invite them to church.
Yeah.
She came along with me. She's loved it. She's now telling everyone and she's invited them. And then they came too. And it was just like, God, this is awesome. That it wasn't even my intention to witness to somebody, but just through being who I am, like they saw you through
Mm,
that
mm,
and they invited themselves.
yeah.
And I think sometimes we're really scared to invite people, but it's just about being a representative of Jesus and being Christ-like, and people will be drawn to him through you, and then giving them the opportunities then to come to things, whether that is just inviting them to come and join you at an alpha course, or whether it is just to come to a social that your church are running, or whether it is to actually just say, do you want to come on Sunday morning? Then we'll go out for coffee afterwards and chat. It seems so hard when you're younger,
Mm,
but as you get older, it becomes a lot more easy to do that. I think because for me, I just don't care so much about the rejection,
yeah.
but it's taken a long time to get to that point.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned rejection because that was something as a next point to talk about on being in media comes with its pros and cons, a lot with scrutiny, and being in the limelight is also important and there.
Mm.
How have you dealt with rejection in the past and your faith helping you?
I feel very blessed that I haven't had a lot of career rejection. I think because I started off working at CBBC on Independence Day 2003, I then worked for them until 2007, and then took a couple of years out, I think, when no, then it was I went freelance, but I was still working for them till about 2010. And then came out of telly for a bit after the heartbreak when I just felt like I had lost all of my passion, my confidence, and just lost my presenting mojo. And I think because that had been beaten out of me because of the relationship I was in and because of how I also looked, I just didn't feel able to do it. Um, but then I think kind of getting to the point when I then realized that I could still do it and I could go and do things that I know that God wanted me to do, that sort of rebooted where I was, just sort of rebooted me. And so then I just thought, right, I feel like I'm rejecting myself actually. I haven't been rejected by the business because of how I'm feeling. So therefore I need to work on me.
Mm,
So that's why I then came out of telly for a couple of years, moved back home, went to my home church, spent those 2 years sort of to get myself back on my feet again. Um, but in terms of rejection from actual jobs, I don't know because so many of my jobs have come because of what I've done already, and or people have seen what I've done. And there's only been a couple of things that I've ever had to audition for
yeah.
that I didn't then get. And one of them was something that happened recently. It was for some voiceover work for a brand new show on CBBS. And I thought I smashed the audition. And then I never heard anything. And then the other day, we were just watching TV in the evening. I said, right, okay, TV goes off at 6:30. So I've got 5 minutes left to go. Oh, can I watch something else, Mummy? I'm like, okay, flicker through CBeebies. I'm like, here you go. That's the show that I auditioned for. I'm like, who got the voice? So then we watched it and we're listening to it. And my daughter recognizes the voice as one of my friends. Like, oh my goodness, she got it. And I was so delighted that my wonderful
Mm,
friend Joanna got this voice work.
mm,
And I said, "Do you know what? I was gutted that I didn't hear back from them because that's the thing with auditions that you don't often hear
mm.
back. If you don't get a call back, they just go radio silent on you. So I didn't hear anything back from it. But I love the fact that somebody that I know and adore actually got this job. So, oh well, that was worth losing out to her then because I'm glad she got it.
Mhm.
And then I just voice noted her yesterday saying, I could not believe that you got that. I auditioned for
Yeah,
it too. Well done. You sound fantastic on it.
yeah.
So then just being able to see the wins for other people. And I think that's something that we're not always very good at. We're not very good at celebrating other people's wins because it can often cut us deep because we didn't get it.
Yeah.
But it was for a reason.
Yeah.
And it was her job. It wasn't mine to take.
Mm. How do you see the industry changing now with Christians are coming out, which I've seen a lot more people are talking about their faith
Mm,
in the industry.
mm.
So, how do you see the industries now changing and evolving with people of faith, as well as any thoughts on how the industry could be better with people who are in the faith to share more about their faith?
I feel like it's a lot safer because people are a lot more accepting. But then I feel like it's also quite dangerous. And I think that some people don't like to out themselves for fear of being judged, for fear of coming up against conflict, and for fear of appearing a bit weird. But then I think I'm wonderfully weird and I don't mind that. And because I've always worn my faith on my sleeve from the get go, I've never had to hide it as such.
Mm,
Whereas some people feel that they need to, that it might put them in a place of compromise in terms of their work. I've got a few friends that are Christians that are in the media, and some do keep it very quiet, some do live it out. And then one friend who is a presenter as well on a lot of national television, he says that he knows there are lots of Christians that
yeah,
they choose not to share their faith.
yeah.
And I respect that because that's their choice.
Mm,
And they are entitled to live their faith privately in the same way that I'm entitled to live my faith publicly.
mm,
And that might mean that I come up against more attack from people. It might mean that
mm,
it's less because I'm just being very transparent. But I think that the industry is now just generally a lot more accepting of everybody. And so I'm hoping that there's a lot more
mm,
love in it,
mm.
and that going forward, we can definitely encourage that
Yeah,
by just being inclusive, understanding,
yeah.
accepting, forgiving, gracious,
Mm.
very gracious towards people.
So, if someone's listening now and looking to pursue a career in TV personality, who have a faith background, what's your tips and advice that you would give to that person for pursuing the career?
Go for it. Be real. Step out in faith. What have you got to lose? Somebody will need to hear your story and what you have to say because you're so unique and nobody else has the words coming from your mouth. And God's put them there for a reason. So
Mm,
don't be scared to shout it out.
mm,
And like I said, you may come up against conflict, but that's okay. Sometimes I like to just sort of rattle the devil's cage a bit, be like, ha ha, ha, you can try and get me, but nah, yeah,
mm.
I got this. God's got my back. And I think sometimes people run away from that because they then get scared and get put off by things.
Yeah,
But I feel strengthened, feel like Christ is my backbone, the reason I stand tall.
yeah.
He's my crutch, the thing that I lean on, that I depend on, that really helps me get through. And if you feel a real conviction from the Lord that He needs you to do something quite specific and very unique in the business, then get out there and do it. Do it. There's
Mm,
so many ways that you can get out there
mm,
now. There's so many ways of self promoting on social media, on
mm,
YouTube, on all the different streaming platforms. There are so many ways that you can create your own content and set up your own channels and just get things out there, things that they weren't as readily possible when I started back in
yeah,
2001. So it's great for you to fulfill your God given potential
yeah,
and to let the world see another form of Jesus that looks like you.
yeah. That's amazing. And then we know you from a TV personality and television media. What is Gemma doing outside of that?
Gemma likes getting her nails done. She likes going and drinking chai lattes. She likes chatting with friends. She likes hanging out with family and friends. I like swimming. I love baking. I like eating soul food. Some good Caribbean food. Yes, I like eating soul food. Um, I'm pretty chill. I think because on telly, I'm very kind of high energy, but I just like to be pretty chill at home. Yeah, I think I like watching telly with my family. We tend to watch a lot of sort of reality TV things. My daughter likes Junior Bake Off and Strictly and The Masked Singer, that kind of thing. And and I like watching Ant and Dec on I'm a Celeb or Takeaway or whatever it is that they're doing. I think they're brilliant. Um, and I like reading. I love reading at bedtime. I find that it's my one way to sort of help me switch off after a hectic day. I love autobiographies and I love faith-based books. Um, and yeah, it sounds really boring. I mean, that's probably why I don't post much on socials because my private life, I keep it very private. I think it's good to have a personal life and a public profile. And my personal life, I've always kept very private. Um, I only outed myself as a mum when I released my first children's book in 2021. And that was after lots of publishers had been in touch with me saying, you need to write books. And I said, yeah, I've got a couple of ideas, pirate related maybe, but they're just not coming to me. But it was when I had our daughter, who's now 8, that I was reading books to her. And I thought, there aren't that many good Christian books out there that have very diverse characters.
Mm.
And because I'm mixed race, my mum's Jamaican, my dad's English, my husband's white, our daughter is mixed race. So she is white passing that you wouldn't necessarily know that she had a brown skinned mum, but she does tan very well. Um, and I just thought that's her lived experience. And yet, looking at literature, she's not seeing her family represented. So then I did chat with a publisher and we came up with an idea to do some modern retellings of Bible stories, but set in a modern day family.
Wow.
And it's my modern day family.
Mm.
So it's what we look like. And this very white middle class, she would say, publisher said, I've never thought about a black Jamaican grandmother having a white, blue eyed, blonde haired granddaughter. So, yeah, that's my family. That's my mum and my daughter. And so we wrote these lovely stories that are just 5 short Bible stories. They are based on the actual content of the Bible story, but they've been reworked to build the characters into modern day family set
Yeah.
characters. So there's a character that represents Jesus, for example, in the children. So my daughter, and for the sake of the books, our adopted son, who is actually the son of a friend of ours that's in our family, um, is from their perspectives talking about different things to help them become a good friend. So things like loving and sharing and being kind, or helping them to explore their big feelings. They're looking at their emotions, like being frustrated or being cross or being angry or bringing joy or finding peace. And so they're all taken from Bible stories. So whether it's the feeding of the 5,000 or the lost sheep, and I take the idea of those stories and I've just molded them into family settings. So the prodigal son, for example,
Mm.
is actually the prodigal granddaughter. She gets given a pocket money by granddad and goes off and spends it all in the fair, whilst her older brother's left there helping him on a stool. Like, why? What's going on here? This is not fair. She's off having a lovely time, merry-go-round, burgers, and candy floss, and I'm here working. How's that fair? And she then comes back with no money. She wants a hot chocolate, and then granddad gives her a hot chocolate, and the older grandchild is like, "Hang on a minute, I've been here all day. I haven't had a hot chocolate." And granddad then says, "But you've been here all the time. You can have as many as you like." And it's just modern retelling of that story that we know so well, but in a way that families of faith and families of none can read and they can relate to because it's families. And even people that don't have their own children can relate to some character or
Mm.
some personality
Mm.
within the story to be able to relate it then to some setting they might find themselves in within their families or within their church family or within their work setting.
Mm.
And so they're brilliant books. The series is called See, Let's Be. It's all about imitating Christ's
Wow.
behaviors. And the first book is called A Good Friend. And the second one is called Me, about exploring some of those big feelings about how we feel, how about being the best version of ourselves. And so then those books are out. I'm now actually working on a new project with a friend that we haven't announced yet, that we are hoping is going to be the next big book thing. Very exciting projects that we're working on. He's an incredible illustrator. We've been working together to collaborate, writing the stories as well. So that's kind of what I'm up to now. I'm doing a lot more
Wow.
writing. And I've just got sent this morning the link to my next column that comes out in Premiere Christianity magazine. So I'm a columnist for them as well. So that goes out in published form, in magazine form, but also online around the world. So doing a bit of writing, doing a bit of pottering around the house, doing wifing, doing mumming, doing friending, you know. That's just how I roll.
Fantastic. All right. Well, last question before we hit to 7 rapid quick fire questions. What's the one message about faith that you wish people in the media would know more about?
Mm, it's what you need to get you through when so much is based on image and performance and likes or followers. Having something that completely cements you to
Mm,
truth
mm,
is so helpful. It doesn't matter what you look like that day or how you sound, but having that truth fundamentally running
mm.
through your core, knowing whose you are in a world where everyone is judging you, and you can find contentment in being who you are in Jesus.
That's a that's a brilliant way to end the segment. Thank you so much, Gemma.
It's a pleasure.
That was a heartwarming and very beautifully put way to end that piece. Now let's get into 7
All right.
quick rapid fire
Okay.
questions. And the reason 7 is 7 completion.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end,
Right.
and I'll send you these questions. If you're ready, let me know when you're ready.
Ready.
Okay. Favorite Bible verse?
Oh, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, and plans to give you hope in the future. Jeremiah 29:11.
Morning person and night owl?
Ooh, probably a night owl. I like to potter around the house when it's all very quiet and everyone else is asleep. I just find that I'm quite productive then.
Tea or coffee?
Oh, tea, herbal tea. I don't drink coffee.
If you could have dinner with one biblical person, who would that be?
Ah, maybe Martha, because I'm a bit of always busy doing stuff as well, like Martha was, and maybe just sit down and just find out when did she actually chill? What did chill look like to her? Because I'd like to know. How did you find your chill? Was it Mary or was it Jesus that helped you?
One thing nobody knows about you.
um, oh, one thing nobody knows about me. Oh, that's a really hard one, as I often tell people a lot of stuff. um, I used to love Take That, and I had my entire bedroom covered in Take That posters, and to the point where I even started putting them on the ceilings. And I have kept a few of them, and I still have them in our attic because I can't get rid of them.
Biggest career highlight?
Um, Biggest career highlight would probably be working with Sir David Attenborough at the Royal Albert Hall, presenting one of the proms, and I got to interview him on stage.
No.
And there was just a beautiful moment where, prior to the show, we were rehearsing with him, and he just went off on one talking about some great expedition he'd been on, and we all just sat there like drooling at his story. But the thing that happened on stage was that he actually forgot his lines. And so I got to helpfully, carefully prompt Sir David Attenborough to get him back on track to carry on with the dialogue. That was like, yay, what an honour.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
a
cool.
new one.
Yeah, really cool.
And last but not least, the funniest moment on set?
Oh, crikey. Oh, yeah. So this one actually I think you can find on YouTube, because there was a time, it's a swashbuckle blooper, and so I come down at the beginning of each show from the top of the ship down a slide onto the deck, and there's a pole on the top of the slide to hold on to, and I'd been down this slide hundreds of times, but for some reason on this one day I forgot the pole was there. As I went down, I clunked my head on the top of this pole, and it's funny because in that moment of shock, I went back to my West Country roots and I said, "Oh, I've banged me head." And it was so funny how just in that moment I went back to being little West Country bumpkin again. And I banged my head, and then in my earpiece, so the talk back from the gallery, they then said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm all right." And I just lost it. I just got the giggles. It was very funny. That was, yeah, just one of those really funny moments that I went back to my roots. I went back to what felt safe and familiar.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gemma. It's a pleasure. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
coming on. Thank you for sharing your expertise, your guidance, your faith, your journey. It's been truly inspiring. And I'm sure for someone who's going to be watching this will be blessed by listening to your story. So thank you again so
Amen.
much, Gemma.
Amen. Thank you.